In the summer of 1887, Dr. Elias Mercer arrived at a remote farmhouse in Ohio, expecting nothing more than a difficult end-of-life case. But what he encountered instead would slowly unravel his understanding of both medicine and history. The patient was Jonathan Holt, a man whose size alone defied ordinary explanation. Standing nearly 9 feet tall in his prime, Holt was not the frail curiosity the public often imagined when thinking of giants. Those who knew him described intelligence, restraint, and an unsettling calm presence that made people forget his physical scale after a few minutes of conversation. But now that same man was dying. His body was collapsing under severe respiratory failure. And Mercer, trained in Philadelphia and known for his meticulous medical notes, quickly realized this was not a standard illness. Holt's body didn't show the irregularities typically associated with extreme height disorders. Instead, his proportions were balanced, almost engineered in their symmetry, as if he had simply been scaled upward rather than distorted by disease. That detail alone unsettled Mercer more than anything else in the room. As the days passed, Holt's condition worsened, but his mind remained sharp. He began asking questions that didn't belong to a dying man. Questions about old architecture, ancient stories, and why certain historical structures seemed disproportionately large compared to modern human scale. At first, Mercer dismissed it as fevered thought, but on the third night, something shifted. Holt requested privacy. Everyone left except the doctor. In the silence that followed, Holt spoke calmly, almost deliberately, claiming that his family line carried memories of a world that existed before recorded history stabilized into what we now accept. He described stories passed down through generations about a time when massive stone structures were not anomalies but remnants of a forgotten age. Mercer tried to challenge him, but Holt stopped him mid-sentence, insisting that what he was saying was not imagination but inheritance. Then, just before dawn, Holt handed Mercer a small iron key and told him that when the body failed, others would come, not to investigate his death, but to remove him entirely. Mercer didn't fully understand what he meant. Not yet. The moment Holt died, everything changed in a way Mercer could not ignore. Within hours, unfamiliar men arrived at the property claiming to represent a scientific institution. Their interest wasn't in documenting the death or assisting the family. They wanted the body. They offered money far beyond reason, as if value had no limit when the object in question was Holt himself. The family refused. But what unsettled Mercer most was not their persistence, but their timing. They arrived too quickly, as if they had been waiting for the exact moment life ended. When they left, one of them asked Mercer a quiet question about whether Holt had left anything behind. That question stayed with him. That night, Mercer used the iron key and discovered a hidden chest beneath the floorboards filled with journals, sketches, and photographs that defied his expectations entirely. Inside were repeated references to massive buried structures, ancient foundations beneath modern cities, and symbols suggesting that earlier layers of civilization had been built at a scale inconsistent with conventional human history. The deeper he read, the more disturbing it became, not because of fantasy, but because of consistency across unrelated records. After Holt's burial, Mercer believed the matter should have ended, but instead, it escalated. The grave was disturbed within days, and later, the body itself disappeared completely without clear explanation or trace. Official responses were dismissive, treating the incident as either criminal theft or mismanagement. But Mercer noticed a pattern forming across historical records as he investigated further. He found repeated cases of extraordinarily tall individuals across decades whose remains vanished shortly after. Death, often absorbed into institutions, or simply lost in documentation gaps that should not have existed at scale. Newspaper reports, medical testimonies, and excavation records all pointed toward discoveries of unusually large skeletons during the 19th and early 20th centuries, yet almost none of those remains could be traced forward into modern collections. Some were said to have been transferred, others studied, but the physical evidence rarely survived the institutional transition. Mercer began to suspect this was not coincidence, but a systematic pattern of removal that extended beyond one case or one man. As Mercer's research deepened, so did the resistance he faced. Professional colleagues distanced themselves. Institutions stopped responding. His attempts to publish findings were rejected without review. Yet the more he was ignored, the more consistent the anomalies appeared. He found architectural inconsistencies in large historic buildings, suggesting older foundations beneath newer construction. He found excavation reports abruptly ending after major discoveries. He found references to artifacts and skeletal remains that entered official systems but never appeared again. Over time, Mercer began forming a theory he himself struggled to accept, that history might not be a continuous record, but a curated one. Not necessarily fabricated, but selectively preserved. Jonathan Holt's final words returned to him repeatedly during this period, especially the claim that some histories are not lost, but removed. Mercer died before he could complete his work, and much of his documentation was scattered or lost. Yet fragments of his research survived, pointing to a troubling possibility that remains unresolved even today. If you've made it this far, you have to ask yourself something uncomfortable. Are we looking at isolated medical curiosities or pieces of a larger story that was never meant to stay connected? And here's the real question nobody agrees on. If these giants truly existed the way the records suggest, why did so many of their remains vanish at the exact moment that could have proven it? What do you think was really happening to them after death? Drop your answer in the comments. I want to see how people interpret this pattern, because the conclusions here change everything depending on how you connect the dots. And one more thing. If history really was rewritten, what's the one part of our past you think is most likely missing from the official record? What if everything you just heard is only a fragment of a much bigger hidden history, and the rest is still out there waiting to be uncovered? If this changed the way you see the world, hit subscribe now, because the next story goes even deeper. Share this with someone who questions everything. And drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to know what you think about this.